chosen one, stop scrolling for just a moment, because what you are about to hear is not a general word meant for everyone. It is timed specifically for this exact week of your life. God is not asking you to wait for a distant future date to receive this. He is telling you plainly, someone is being sent into your life this week, and before they even speak a full sentence to you, He is going to give you the very first letter of their name tonight, so that when they arrive, you will recognize them instead of walking right past the moment heaven has been preparing for months. Before we go any further, if you have not yet subscribed, do it now and turn on the bell, because this word unfolds in stages, and if you leave early, you will only receive half of what is being released tonight. If you are already part of this family, thank you for staying faithful to this place. Now comment 777 below if your spirit has felt unusually restless this week, almost as if it is bracing for something it cannot yet name. Let me ask you something before we continue, because I already suspect I know the answer. Have you felt a strange, quiet anticipation lately? A sense that something is shifting even though nothing on the outside has visibly changed yet? Have you found yourself paying closer attention to small interactions this week than you normally would, as if some part of you is already scanning every room you walk into? Have you had a dream recently, even a fragment of one you could not fully remember, that left you with a feeling rather than a picture, a feeling you have not been able to shake since you woke up? If any of that sounds familiar, I want you to know you are not imagining it. Your spirit has already been notified. Tonight, your mind is simply catching up to what it already knew. Here is what I need you to understand before we go deeper, because this changes how you receive everything else I am about to say. This is not a coincidence of timing that you happen to be watching this message during the exact week something is shifting. Heaven does not release a word like this randomly. It releases it because you are standing at the very edge of the moment it describes, close enough that preparation now actually matters, close enough that if you walk through this week distracted, doubtful, or closed off, you risk missing the very thing you have been asking God for. I want to tell you why this is happening now and not sooner. You have spent time in a season of preparation, whether you fully realized it or not. Some of you have been healing from something that ended painfully. Some of you have been rebuilding your confidence after a season that quietly wore you down. Some of you have simply been growing, becoming steadier, becoming someone capable of receiving something good without immediately sabotaging it out of fear. God does not send significant people into your life before you are ready to actually recognize and receive them. The timing of this week is not random. It is the direct result of work that has already been done in you, whether or not anyone around you ever noticed it happening. Now let me give you the first sign, because this is the one you came for. Before this person's full name arrives, God is going to show you the first letter, the very sound that opens the door to everything else. I want you to quiet your mind for just a second and notice whatever letter is already floating at the edge of your thoughts right now. Do not force it. Do not overthink it. Just notice what surfaces the moment your mind goes quiet. That is not random static. That is the first thread of a name being woven into your awareness before the full picture arrives. If a letter came to you just now, comment it below, just the letter, nothing else, because I want you to see how many people in this comment section are receiving the exact same confirmation tonight, at the exact same hour, and that is not coincidence. That is heaven moving on a scale bigger than any single person watching this. I want to pause here for a moment because I can already feel some of you trying to force a name to match the letter, running through everyone you currently know, trying to make the pieces fit immediately. I need you to release that urge right now. This word is not necessarily about someone already in your life. Read the title again. Someone is being sent this week. That means new. That means a person who may not have crossed your path yet at all, or someone who has been on the edges of your life without ever stepping fully into the center of it until now. Do not force this onto the nearest familiar face just because it feels safer than the unknown. Sometimes, God's timing requires you to stay open to someone you have not met yet, rather than trying to squeeze a new promise into an old, familiar shape. Let me tell you a short story before we go further, because I think it will help this settle the way it is meant to. There was once a traveler walking a long road who had grown so used to walking alone that she stopped looking up when she heard footsteps behind her, assuming, every time, that it was simply an echo of her own pace. One evening, exhausted, she sat down at a crossroads to rest, certain no one would find her there, certain the road ahead was hers to walk alone the way it always had been. But a stranger came around the bend at exactly that hour, someone who had taken an entirely different path that day, delayed by circumstances that seemed inconvenient at the time, a broken wheel, a wrong turn, a storm that forced a detour. Those delays, which felt like nothing but frustration in the moment, were the exact reason his path and her path intersected at that crossroads, at that hour, instead of missing each other by minutes on two different roads. Every frustrating detour in your own life may have simply been positioning you for a specific hour this week, an hour you cannot yet see the shape of. I want to give you the second sign now, because the letter alone is not enough. The second sign is the setting, not necessarily a grand or obviously significant place, but somewhere ordinary that will only reveal its significance in hindsight. It might be a place you visit out of routine, somewhere you almost did not go this week, a moment you nearly canceled or rescheduled without a clear reason why. Pay attention to any plan this week that you feel a strange pull to keep, even when canceling would be more convenient. That pull is not stubbornness, it is guidance. I need to pause again here, because I want to speak honestly to something some of you are feeling right now, a kind of fear underneath the excitement. Some of you have been disappointed by promises like this before, not from God necessarily, but from your own hope, stretched out and let down enough times that receiving a word like this now feels almost dangerous, like setting yourself up to be hurt again. I understand that fear. It is not foolish. But I want you to notice the difference between guarding your heart and closing it completely. Guarding your heart means moving with wisdom. Closing it completely means missing the very thing you have been asking for, because you decided in advance that hoping was too risky to try one more time. Here is the third sign, and I want you to sit with this one for a moment before continuing. When this person arrives, or when you finally recognize someone who has already been quietly present, there will be an unusual sense of ease around them, faster than logic would normally allow. Not a dramatic spark necessarily, not fireworks, but something steadier, a comfort that makes very little sense given how little time has actually passed. Counterfeit connections tend to create urgency and chaos. What God sends tends to create an unexplainable calm, a sense that you do not have to perform, prove yourself, or manage anything carefully in order to be received well. If you meet someone this week and notice that strange early ease, do not dismiss it as too fast to be real. Sometimes recognition simply moves faster than explanation. I want you to comment, "I receive this," if any part of tonight's word is already resonating in your spirit. Because speaking agreement out loud, even here, moves something from quiet hope into declared expectation. And declared expectation has a way of positioning you to notice what you might have otherwise let pass by unnoticed. Let me give you the fourth sign now, because this one matters more than people usually realize. Pay close attention this week to any moment that feels slightly inconvenient but oddly insistent, an errand you did not plan, an invitation you almost declined, a conversation that goes on longer than you expected with someone you assumed would only be a passing interaction. Heaven often disguises important appointments as minor inconveniences, precisely so that only the people paying attention actually notice them in time. If something this week nudges you outside your normal rhythm, even slightly, consider that nudge worth following rather than dismissing. I need to pause once more here because I want to address something practical before we go further. Receiving this word does not mean you should walk through this week suspicious of every new interaction, analyzing every stranger for hidden significance, exhausting yourself, trying to force a moment to feel prophetic. That kind of anxious searching actually works against what God is doing. The posture He is asking for is not frantic searching. It is calm attentiveness. The difference between someone straining to hear a faint sound and someone simply staying quiet enough that when the sound comes, they do not miss it. Here is the fifth and final sign. When this person's name is finally spoken in full, whether by them directly or by someone introducing you, something in your chest will settle rather than race. It will not feel like chasing something down. It will feel more like finally being able to exhale after holding your breath without realizing you were holding it. That settling is the truest form of confirmation available to you, more reliable than excitement, more reliable than nervous energy, because excitement can be manufactured by circumstance, but a genuine settling in your spirit is far harder to fake, even to yourself. I think about the story of Ruth sometimes when I think about timing like this, because her story reminds us how much of what changes our lives arrives disguised as an ordinary day. She went to the fields that particular morning simply to gather grain for survival, not expecting anything beyond the practical task in front of her. She did not know, walking into that field, that she was walking into the exact field that belonged to Boaz, the very field that would change the entire trajectory of her life. Nothing about that morning looked prophetic while it was happening. It looked like an ordinary day of necessary work. The most significant appointments in Scripture rarely arrived wrapped in obvious drama. They arrived inside ordinary days, recognized only by people who remained humble enough to notice them. I want to speak for a moment about the ordinary disguises this appointment might wear, because I do not want you spending this week imagining something overly dramatic and missing the far quieter version that actually shows up. It may not arrive as a stranger across a crowded room. It could be a coworker you have exchanged only a few words with, someone whose presence you have never really considered before this week. It could be someone reintroduced to you through a friend, a name you half remember from years ago suddenly resurfacing in conversation. It could even be someone you have already met once, briefly, and dismissed as unremarkable, only for this week to be the moment your paths cross again in a way that finally registers. Do not let the ordinariness of the setting convince you that nothing significant is happening. The most important doors rarely look important while you are standing in front of them. I also want to gently caution you against a specific mistake many people make when they receive a word like this one. Do not spend this week performing a version of yourself you think will be more attractive to whoever is coming. Do not suddenly become someone else, someone more polished, more guarded, more curated than you actually are, out of fear that your normal self will not be enough to be recognized or chosen. Whoever heaven is sending this week is not being sent to meet a performance. They are being sent to meet you, the actual you, tired days and easy days and all. If you spend this week hiding behind a version of yourself built for impressing rather than connecting, you risk the two of you meeting without either of you actually being seen, because receiving a promise is different from knowing how to carry it well. Do not spend this week interrogating every person you meet, testing them against a checklist built from tonight's signs. That kind of pressure tends to suffocate the very thing it is trying to protect. Instead, simply stay a little more present than usual. Look up a little more often. Say yes to the slightly inconvenient invitation instead of automatically declining it. Beyond that, Let it unfold the way it is meant to, without your grip tightening around it. I also want to gently address the fear some of you carry about getting this wrong, about misreading an ordinary person as something significant simply because you wanted a sign badly enough to manufacture one. That fear, while understandable, often comes from putting the entire weight of discernment on your own shoulders alone. You are not meant to figure this out purely through analysis. Peace was already given to you as one of the signs specifically because peace bypasses your overthinking. If your spirit settles around someone, you do not need to intellectually solve the mystery of why. You are allowed to simply trust the settling itself. Before I close tonight, I want to remind you of something important because I do not want you to leave this message and immediately start forcing conclusions onto every interaction for the rest of the week. What God is describing is a person He is sending, not a test. He is administering. You do not have to perform your way into recognizing them correctly. If you miss a moment this week, that does not mean the promise is void. It simply means the fullness of it may unfold slightly differently than you expect, on a timeline that still belongs to Him, rather than to your ability to interpret everything perfectly in real time. Comment Amen. If you believe God can move this specifically, this quickly, inside the span of a single ordinary week. Share this with someone you know is waiting on something they have almost stopped hoping for, because sometimes the people around us need permission to keep expecting good things just as much as we do. Subscribe if tonight's word found you at the right time, because what comes later in this series goes even deeper into recognizing the appointments heaven sends disguised as ordinary days. Chosen one, hear this as we close. You are not being asked to chase anything this week. You are being asked to stay awake enough to notice what is already being arranged around you. The letter that surfaced in your mind tonight was not random. The restlessness you have felt this week was not random. The pull toward certain plans, certain places, certain conversations you almost avoided, none of it was random. Something is already moving toward you, closer than it has ever been, and all that is left now is for you to walk through this week with your eyes open, your heart steady, and your spirit ready to recognize the exact moment it finally arrives.